God bless the great state of Nevada. It is wonderful to be here today. Thank you for coming out. Let me say thank you to the men and women of Nevada for electing a strong, principled, constitutionalist warrior like Attorney General Adam Laxalt. You know, Adam's grandfather was a legend. Adam's grandfather stood by Ronald Reagan when all of Washington didn't want to see Reagan go to Washington. And when Adam ran for Attorney General, the entire political establishment did not want him to win. They fought against him with every tool they can. They came after him hard, but Adam got elected by standing with courageous conservatives all across the state of Nevada. And I am proud that Adam is a friend. I'm proud that he is chairing our campaign here in the great state of Nevada. And how about Glenn Beck? Isn't he phenomenal? Look, Glenn is so... He is so passionate. He's so principled. He loves the Constitution. He loves freedom. And I'll tell you, every time I hear Glenn speak, I learn something. You know, when Glenn pulls out his whiteboard, when he starts walking people through, Glenn is an educator. When he starts walking people through the principles of the framers of our Constitution, the principles that built America, the principles of American exceptionalism. It's one thing to say you want to make America great again. You can even print a baseball cap with that written on it. It's another thing to understand the principles that made America great in the first place. And I will tell you, I'm so proud to be standing shoulder to shoulder with my friend Glenn Beck. You know, you can learn a lot by looking to the history, to the roots of a given word. If you look at the word politics, the word has two parts. Poly, meaning many, and ticks, meaning blood-sucking parasites. And that is a fairly accurate description of Washington, D.C. You know, we're joined here today also by my friend, California Congressman Dana Rohrabacher. Like Nevada's Paul Laxalt, Dana was with Ronald Reagan from the very beginning. Dana, in fact, is a young speechwriter. One of my favorite stories about Dana is that he went and camped out on Ronald Reagan's backyard. Slept on his backyard back before Reagan was elected to anything, came and just said, "Mr. Reagan, I want to work for you." And they were sending him away. "What are you doing? Who is this guy?" And Reagan heard and said, "Well, hold on. If he slept on my backyard, let me at least talk to him." And he became one of Ronald Reagan's key speechwriters, one of his key trusted advisors. Now, for many years, he's represented the state of California in Congress, and he is a man who values liberty and the Constitution more than going along to get along in Washington. There is a reason Dana and I Both need food tasters in the members' dining room. And I will say one of the striking things, if you look at the people, at the courageous conservatives that have come together behind our campaign, whether it's Dana, whether it's Adam, whether it's Glenn, the consistent pattern is these are men and women that love this country, that are committed to the Constitution, and are willing to speak the truth no matter what the price. The truth has power. And speaking the truth with a smile drives Washington crazy. Thank you, sir. Let me tell you, I could not be more encouraged, more optimistic than I am right now. Every one of us is here today because our country's in crisis, because we're bankrupting our kids and grandkids, because our constitutional rights are under assault each and every day, and because America has receded from leadership in the world, and it has made the world a much more dangerous place. And yet, in spite of all of that, I am here with a word of hope and encouragement. All across this country, people are waking up. Sometimes things have to get really bad to startle people out of their slumber. And I want to tell you, there is a spirit of awakening that is sweeping this country. So I want to ask everyone here to look forward. Look forward to January 2017. If I am elected president, let me tell you what I intend to do on the first day in office. The first thing I intend to do is rescind every single illegal and unconstitutional executive action taken by this president. The second thing I intend to do on the first day in office is instruct the U.S. Department of Justice to open an investigation into Planned Parenthood and to prosecute any and all criminal conviction. The third thing I intend to do on the first day in office is instruct the Department of Justice and the IRS and every other federal agency that the persecution of religious liberty ends today. That means that every serviceman and woman has the right to seek out and worship God Almighty with all of their hearts, minds, and souls, and their superior officer has nothing to say about it. The fourth thing I intend to do is rip to shreds this catastrophic Iranian nuclear deal. And the fifth thing I intend to do on the first day in office is begin the process of moving the American embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, the once and eternal capital of Israel. Now that's day one. In the days that follow, I will nominate a strong, principled constitutionalist to replace Justice Antonin Scalia on the U.S. Supreme Court. You know, just 2 days ago, I had the privilege of attending Justice Scalia's funeral. Justice Scalia was a lion of the law. He was someone who I knew personally for 20 years. He was brilliant. He was passionate. He was a voluble Italian. His wife, Maureen, is Irish. And let me tell you, being myself Cuban, Irish, and Italian, that is a dangerous combination. But Justice Scalia loved the Constitution and spent 3 decades fighting to defend the Constitution on the Supreme Court each and every day. As Ronald Reagan was to the presidency, so too was Justice Scalia to the U.S. Supreme Court. And his passing underscores the stakes of this election. It is not one branch of government, but 2 that hang in the balance. We are one liberal justice away from the Supreme Court mandating unlimited abortion on demand all across this country with no restrictions whatsoever. We are one liberal justice away from the Supreme Court reading the Second Amendment out of the Bill of Rights. Let me tell you, Justice Scalia's most significant majority opinion was Heller versus District of Columbia. Now, I know that case very, very well because I represented 31 states in Heller defending the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, and we won 5-4. We're one justice away from the court concluding that no individual here has any individual right to keep and bear arms whatsoever. You know, in Texas, before I was in the Senate, I was the Solicitor General of Texas, the chief lawyer for the state in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. We defended the 10 Commandments monument on the state capitol grounds. We went to the Supreme Court and we won 5-4. We are one liberal justice away from the Supreme Court ordering 10 Commandments monuments torn down all over this country. And I'll tell you, the most significant case I argued as Solicitor General was a case called Medellin versus Texas. Medellin involved a tragic crime in my hometown of Houston where 2 teenage girls were horribly assaulted and murdered by a gang. One of those gang members, Jose Ernesto Medellin, was an illegal immigrant who confessed to the crime in grisly details, was convicted of that horrible murder. But the case took a very strange turn because the World Court, the judicial arm of the United Nations, issued an order to the United States to reopen the convictions of 51 murderers in this country. Never before has any foreign court tried to bind the U.S. justice system. Texas stood up and we fought the World Court and the United Nations. I argued this case twice in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. On the other side was the World Court, was the United Nations, was 90 foreign nations, and was the President of the United States. And I'm sorry to tell you, it wasn't Barack Obama. It was George W. Bush. Now, my wife Heidi and I, we met back in 2000 working on the Bush campaign. We were actually one of 8 marriages came out of that campaign. So a lousy joke that I've told many, many times, whatever anyone else says about George W. Bush, in our house, he will always be a uniter and not a divider. But in this instance, President Bush received some very, very poor advice. And he signed a 2-paragraph order that attempted to order the state courts to obey the world court. Now, I'll tell you, it was an interesting conversation I had with my boss at the time, the Attorney General, Greg Abbott, now the governor of Texas. It was an unusual thing for Texas to be opposing the President of the United States before the U.S. Supreme Court, particularly when that president was a Texan, was a Republican, was our former governor, and was a friend. And yet I'm proud to tell you that twice I went before the U.S. Supreme Court and argued, number one, neither the World Court nor the United Nations have any jurisdiction whatsoever in the United States of America. And number two, no president, Democrat or Republican, has the constitutional authority to give away U.S. sovereignty. And we won 6-3. And in the final iteration of the case, it too dropped down to 5-4. We're one justice away from the Supreme Court concluding that the United Nations and the World Court can bind our justice system. We are one justice away from the Supreme Court subjecting us to international law and taking away sovereignty which vests in one place and one place only, we the people. And I think Justice Scalia's passing has elevated the assessment that the men and women of Nevada are making. As you look at the very fine individual standing on that debate stage, the question to ask that I believe the people of Nevada are asking is, who do I know? Beyond a shadow of a doubt, who do I know will nominate strong conservative justices that will protect my rights? And I give you my word that every justice I appoint to the Supreme Court will be a principled constitutionalist who will ferociously defend the Bill of Rights for your children and my children. In the days that follow, I will go to Congress, and we will repeal every word of Obamacare. We'll pass common sense health care reform that makes health insurance personal and portable and affordable and keeps government from getting in between us and our doctors. I will instruct the U.S. Department of Education that Common Core ends today. And we will finally secure the borders and end sanctuary cities. Let me talk to all the men and women here in Nevada that are facing struggling economic situations, that are facing a lack of jobs, that are seeing their hours forcibly reduced to part-time, that are seeing their wages stagnating rather than going up. Illegal immigration is a powerful anchor pulling down wages of working Americans, taking away jobs, and I will tell you, of the individuals on that stage, I am the only person who led the fight against amnesty and will secure the borders and protect the jobs of the American people. In the days that follow, we will rebuild our military. And we will honor the solemn commitments made to every soldier and sailor and airman and Marine. That includes fundamentally reforming the VA so that every veteran has the right to choose his or her doctor. That includes protecting the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms of every serviceman and woman. And one of the most shameful aspects of the last 7 years was the president over and over again sending our fighting men and women into combat with rules of engagement that tie their arms behind their back and make it impossible for them to win. Mark my words, on January 2017, that will end. America has always been reluctant to engage in military conflict. We are slow to anger. But if and when military force is needed, we should use overwhelming force, kill the enemy, and then get the heck out. In the days that follow, we will take on the EPA and the BLM and the CFPB and the alphabet soup of federal agencies that have descended like locusts on farmers and ranchers and small businesses, killing jobs all over this country. Thank you, sir, for being here. Thank you very much, sir, for being here. Thank you for expressing your views. One of the great things of the First Amendment is it even allows Bernie Sanders supporters to come to our events. And let me say, sir, you have a First Amendment right to express your views, but at the same time, 85% of the state of Nevada is owned by the federal government. That will end if I am President of the United States. There is no reason on earth the federal government should be the largest landlord in the United States of America. In Texas, the federal government owns 2% of the land, and we think that's 2% too much. And you have my commitment that as president, we will transfer that federal land back to the state and back to the people of Nevada. And I would note that is an issue on which Mr. Trump and I disagree. Mr. Trump has publicly said he thinks the federal government should continue to control that land, to own that land. I trust the people of Nevada more than the bureaucrats in Washington. And in the days that follow, I will go to Congress and we will pass a simple flat tax. So that every American can fill out our taxes on a postcard. And when we do that, we should abolish the IRS. You know, the media tries to tell us that the Obama-Clinton economy is the new normal. That stagnation is what we should come to expect, that there's nothing better. We have the lowest percentage of Americans working today since 1977. Wages have been frozen for 20 years. Median wages today are the same as they were in 1996. Now that has been driven by illegal immigration that Washington refuses to solve, and that has been driven by economic policies that hammer the living daylights out of small businesses. Small businesses are the heart of the economy. You want stagnation? Hammer them like we have the last 7 years. You want economic growth? Unchain small businesses, and we will see booming economic growth. Single moms struggling to feed their kids, working 2, 3, 4 part-time jobs because Obamacare doesn't let them work full-time. Seeing their wages held stagnant, driven down. All of that can turn around. And if we do the 2 major legislative initiatives I'm campaigning on, if we repeal Obamacare and pass a flat tax, we will see millions and millions of high-paying jobs, people struggling, being able to achieve the American dream. Listen, for me, just like you, the American dream is personal. It's not something we read about in a school book. It's personal to our lives, to our families. You know, for me, I think about my dad. My dad was born and raised in Cuba. And as a kid, he fought in the Cuban Revolution. He was imprisoned and tortured in Cuba. As a teenager, my father found himself on the floor of a Cuban jail cell, covered in mud and blood and grime. His nose was broken, his teeth were shattered out of his mouth. And he remembers thinking, I don't have any kids. It doesn't matter if I live or I die. But thankfully, God had different plans for my father. He was released from that jail cell and he fled to America, coming here in 1957, fleeing Batista. He was just 18 years old. Couldn't speak English, had nothing, had $100 sewn into his underwear. I don't actually advise carrying money in your underwear. And he got a job washing dishes, making 50 cents an hour. And he worked 7 days a week. He paid his way through school. He and my mom went on to start a small business. So I grew up in Texas as the son of 2 small business owners. I saw the ups and downs, the triumphs and challenges of running a small family business. Today, my dad is a pastor. He travels the country preaching the gospel. When I was a kid, my dad used to say to me over and over again, when we faced oppression in Cuba, I had a place to flee to. If we lose our freedom here, where do we go? You know, it's an interesting comment the gentleman made, the liberals can go to Cuba. You know, Obama is going to Cuba. It'd be nice if he just decided to stay. I mean, if he's trying to turn America into a communist dictatorship, there's one just 90 miles away. You know, I'm reminded of a comment Ronald Reagan made during the Cold War, something liberals never seem to notice. On the Berlin Wall, the machine guns all pointed one direction. Nobody was fleeing freedom saying, let me into the oppression of communism. And let me tell you, to all the useful idiots, it's a big category. Whether it's the media, whether it's the academy, whether it's the intelligentsia, all the useful idiots that lionize the paradise that is Cuba. Have you ever noticed the rafts are all going in one direction? Show me one person down in the Florida Keys that turns an automobile into a boat and heads south. Freedom is real, and it's personal, and it's what we are here fighting for. Now, some of you may be wondering, can we do it? Can it happen? Well, you know, Scripture tells us there's nothing new under the sun. I think where we are today is very, very much like the late 1970s, like the Jimmy Carter administration. Same failed economic policy, same feckless and naive foreign policy. In fact, the exact same countries, Russia and Iran, openly laughing at and mocking the President of the United States. Now, why is it that analogy gives me so much hope and optimism? Because we know how that story ended. All across this country, millions of men and women rose up and became the Reagan Revolution. And it didn't come from Washington. Washington despised Ronald Reagan. By the way, you want to know which candidate will take on Washington? Just ask the simple question, who is Washington attacking? The Reagan Revolution came from the American people, and it turned this country around. Why am I so optimistic? Because the same thing is happening again. All across this country, people are waking up. And let me tell you, Nevada has a powerful voice in that process. We are 30 hours away from the Nevada caucuses. Tomorrow night, Nevada has a voice. Now listen, historically, not that many people come out. Last cycle, it was 32,000 people came to the caucuses. That means every one of you has a voice where you are speaking for hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of courageous conservatives across this country when you come out tomorrow night and cast your vote. And so if you agree with me that it is now or never, that the stakes have never been higher, that we are standing at the edge of a cliff staring down, and if we keep going the same direction, we risk doing irreparable damage to the greatest country in the history of the world. Then I want to ask each of you not just to commit to come tomorrow night and vote, but to pick up the phone and call your mom. It's actually a good idea to call your mom anyway. Call your sister or your son or your next door neighbor, your college roommate or your business partner. Say, this election matters. Matters to me, it matters to my kids. I want to ask every one of you to bring 9 other people tomorrow night. You got 30 hours to find 9 other people to come out. If you have done that, you will have voted 10 times. Let me say to those of you who are not yet 18, if you get 10 other people to show up tomorrow night and vote, you will have voted 10 times before you turn 18 years old. And if you look around at the men and women here, if everyone here brings 9 other people tomorrow night, the people standing in this gymnasium tonight, right now, can literally change the outcome and control the outcome of the Nevada caucuses tomorrow night. You've got 30 hours to let your voice be heard, and heard on a national stage where you have an opportunity to make a real and meaningful difference. You know, it took Jimmy Carter to give us Ronald Reagan. And I am convinced the most long-lasting legacy of Barack Obama is going to be a new generation of leaders in the Republican Party who stand and fight for freedom, who stand and fight for the Constitution, and who stand and fight for the Judeo-Christian values that built this country into the greatest country in the history of the world. Thank you, and God bless you.